Today, you're going to see the best movie from each decade. From the legendary 1920s to the present day, these are not just films. They are legends that defined their time, masterpieces that shaped generations, and elevated cinema to its highest artistic peak. Welcome to Scene Prime. In the 1920s, cinema took a revolutionary step forward with the introduction of sound in The Jazz Singer.
When I was alone for years.
However, this era had yet to produce the great masterpieces of sound cinema. It was a time of experimentation, of uncertain steps toward a new era. And yet, the true gem of this decade remains. Metropolis is a milestone in film history, a bold statement about the future. Directed by Fritz Lang, this masterpiece not only laid the foundation for modern science fiction, but also pushed the boundaries of filmmaking itself. In his vision of a futuristic city, Lang created a world divided, where the wealthy enjoy luxury while the poor are enslaved by the machinery of the system. The figure of Maria, the robot, became one of the most haunting and fascinating icons in cinema history, foreshadowing the complex relationship between humans and machines. With visual effects that seemed impossible for its time, Metropolis shattered all conventions. Though today it may seem like a nostalgic relic, upon its release, it was a revolution that forever transformed the way we perceive cinema. Metropolis remains both a warning and a timeless masterpiece about inequality, power, and humanity. The 1930s saw cinema reach new artistic heights, ushering in a golden age while marking the definitive end of silent film. This decade gave us unforgettable classics. King Kong brought fantasy to new dimensions with groundbreaking effects. The Wizard of Oz transported audiences to a magical world through color and music. And Modern Times saw Charlie Chaplin satirize social tensions while refusing to let silent cinema die. However, one film was 40 years ahead of its time, remaining an undisputed cinematic landmark.
God is my witness. As God is my witness, they're not going to lick me.
Gone with the Wind is the ultimate classic in film history. Based on Margaret Mitchell's novel, the film follows the life of Scarlett O'Hara, masterfully portrayed by Vivien Leigh, as she transforms from a spoiled and fragile girl into a woman hardened by war and loss. Determined to survive through the turmoil of the American Civil War and the South's Reconstruction, Scarlett's journey is unforgettable. With Clark Gable as the iconic Rhett Butler, the film is known for its grand visual spectacle, breathtaking cinematography, and an unforgettable score by Max Steiner. Considered a masterpiece for its groundbreaking narrative techniques and emotional depth, Gone with the Wind explores themes of love, loss, war, and survival in a turbulent historical context. Thanks to its pioneering use of color, the film still looks better than many films from the 1970s, undoubtedly making it the greatest cinematic achievement of the decade. The 1940s were a dark decade for cinema, marked by the rise of film noir and the dominance of war films on the big screen. Movies like Double Indemnity captured the essence of noir, portraying a world of crime, corruption, and fatalism, with deeply ambiguous characters. Casablanca stood out as a classic of romance and war. However, during this time, one film emerged that would change cinema forever, unknowingly becoming the most revolutionary film in history. Citizen Kane, directed by Orson Welles, is without a doubt the most revolutionary film of all time. With its innovative use of non-linear storytelling and fragmented structure, it broke the conventions of classic cinema, challenging audience expectations. Welles transformed cinematography with deep focus shots, unusual angles, and long takes, creating a visually striking and uniquely immersive experience. The story, centered on media tycoon Charles Foster Kane, explores themes of power, corruption, and the loneliness that success can bring. But Citizen Kane didn't just stand out in its time, it influenced every film that followed. From its narrative approach to its technical innovations, it decisively shaped modern cinema. Its legacy endures, continuing to inspire filmmakers across generations. The 1950s marked the birth of auteur cinema and the solidification of new genres. Some Like It Hot remains one of the most perfectly crafted comedies of all time.
I'm a man. Well, nobody's perfect.
The Searchers represented the pinnacle of the classic Western, while Vertigo revolutionized the psychological thriller. Kurosawa's Seven Samurai introduced Japanese cinema to the world and became a reference point for epic storytelling. But among these great films, one stands out as the most powerful, going beyond war and violence to expose the raw reality of human injustice, boldly defying the conventions of its time. Paths of Glory, directed by Stanley Kubrick, is not just a war film. It is one of the most fearless and scathing critiques of military authority and absolute power ever put on screen. Set during World War I, the story follows a group of French soldiers sentenced to death for cowardice after a failed attack, while their colonel, played by Kirk Douglas, fights against the injustice. With flawless direction and an unrelenting script, Kubrick masterfully conveys the dehumanization of war through meticulously crafted shots that heighten the tension and claustrophobia of battle. The film exposes the corruption of military officers and the sacrifice of common soldiers, not only defining the 1950s, but also forever changing the war film genre. It remains an essential and timeless anti-war masterpiece in cinematic history. The 1960s saw the death of classical Hollywood cinema, giving way to an era where auteur filmmaking became the norm, and directors started breaking all the rules. Psycho redefined horror with its mentally disturbed serial killer. Bonnie and Clyde changed the way violence was portrayed on screen. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance killed and buried the classic Western, while the good, the bad, and the ugly reached the pinnacle of spaghetti Western excellence. Persona deconstructed identity and narrative, exploring the subconscious through haunting imagery. Yet, one film overshadowed them all, a film that, even today, remains the greatest cinematic experience ever conceived. 2001, A Space Odyssey, directed by Stanley Kubrick, is not just a film. It is cinema's most transcendent experience. More than a sci-fi story, it is a philosophical journey that redefines our perception of time, humanity, and the universe. From its hypnotic opening with the dawn of man to its enigmatic conclusion, 2001 shatters conventional storytelling and becomes a symphony of sight and sound. Its visual effects were so revolutionary that even today, it is difficult to comprehend how such a film was made in the 1960s. Kubrick's masterful use of silence and music created a film that was far ahead of its time. HAL, cinema's most iconic artificial intelligence, raises profound questions about consciousness and evolution. But beyond its technical and narrative impact, 2001. A Space Odyssey is a unique sensory experience, one that is not merely watched, but lived. More than a film, it is cinema at its highest form of artistic expression. The 1970s were one of the greatest decades in cinema history, where modern filmmaking was solidified and a new generation of directors emerged, breaking all the rules and pushing cinema to new extremes. A Clockwork Orange was a violent dystopia that explored free will and manipulation. The Exorcist terrified the world with its realism and rawness, redefining horror. Taxi Driver captured the feeling of loneliness and descent into madness in a decaying society. And Francis Ford Coppola's Apocalypse now took war cinema to an unprecedented level. But here's the thing. In this decade, the greatest film of all time was released. The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 are not just movies. They are the highest artistic achievement cinema has ever reached. This spot had to include both films. Francis Ford Coppola transformed the story of a crime family into a Shakespearean tragedy about power, corruption, and fate. Marlon Brando's portrayal of Vito Corleone became one of the most iconic performances of all time, while Al Pacino, as Michael, crafted the most tragic and complex character arc ever seen on screen. The first film redefined gangster cinema with its elegance and emotional depth, but the second film surpassed it in ambition, interweaving Vito's rise and Michael's downfall into a narrative masterpiece. With impeccable direction, legendary cinematography, and an immortal soundtrack, The Godfather and its sequel are not just the greatest films ever made. They are cinema in its purest, most timeless, and perfect form. The 1980s were the most creative decade in cinema, where the great blockbusters were born. Indiana Jones defined adventure films with its charismatic protagonist. The Empire Strikes Back elevated Star Wars to legendary status. Meanwhile, Kubrick reinvented horror in his own vision with The Shining, and Scarface immortalized excess and violence, with Al Pacino in his most unhinged role. However, one film perfectly captured the essence of life, nostalgia, and tragedy, one of the most underrated movies in history.
Any problem?
No trouble. Kid stuff.
Once Upon a Time in America is not just a gangster film, it is a poem about time, memory, and betrayal. Sergio Leone crafted his ultimate masterpiece with a non-linear narrative that intertwines the rise and fall of a group of friends in the world of crime. But more than that, it explores the weight of the past on the present. Robert De Niro delivers one of his most subtle performances as Noodles, a man trapped in nostalgia and guilt. Leone's direction, with its deliberate pacing and meticulous staging, turns every frame into a painting. Ennio Morricone's music elevates the film to an almost dreamlike level, reinforcing its melancholic and nostalgic tone. More than a gangster story, it is a lament for lost innocence and the passage of time. Misunderstood upon its release, today it is recognized as one of the greatest films ever made. The perfect farewell from a director who shaped cinema. The 1990s are my favorite decade in film. It was an era of bold, cynical, and realistic storytelling. Pulp Fiction revolutionized narrative structure, dialogue, and character presentation. Goodfellas, my personal favorite, told a gangster story with perhaps the greatest editing in cinema history. The Shawshank Redemption became the ultimate drama about hope and friendship. And The Matrix revolutionized digital effects, ushering in the new millennium. But one film left an unforgettable mark. An extremely realistic, transcendent, and devastating masterpiece. A necessary story that forces us to confront the worst of humanity. Schindler's List is not just a film, it is a historical testimony turned into art. Steven Spielberg set aside spectacle to tell the true story of Oskar Schindler, a businessman who went from indifference to redemption by saving over 1,000 Jews from the Holocaust. Filmed in stark black and white, with a near-documentary style, the movie does not seek to beautify tragedy, but to portray it in its most harrowing form. Every scene is an open wound, with moments of unbearable realism. Ralph Fiennes embodies one of cinema's most terrifying villains, while Liam Neeson portrays a man facing his own conscience. John Williams' score, with Itzhak Perlman's heartbreaking violin, elevates the emotion to an indescribable level. More than just cinema, Schindler's List is a lesson in humanity, a story that must never be forgotten, and one of the most important films ever made. The 2000s marked the definitive transition to digital cinema and the dominance of franchises. The Lord of the Rings elevated fantasy to an epic level never seen before, while The Dark Knight redefined superhero films with an unprecedented level of seriousness. City of God and Oldboy took international cinema to new heights, presenting raw and stylized stories. 21 Grams pushed drama and nonlinear storytelling to the extreme. But something incredible happened. In 2001, just a year into the new millennium, the greatest film of the 21st century was released.
Go on. The car's right outside your house.
Mulholland Drive is not just a movie, it is a dream from which one cannot wake up. David Lynch created the ultimate masterpiece of modern cinema, a labyrinth of fragmented identities, repressed desires, and nightmares disguised as fantasies. What begins as a classic Hollywood tale soon crumbles into a spiral of uncertainty, where logic ceases to exist. Naomi Watts delivers a monumental performance, shifting from innocence to absolute despair. Club Silencio, The Blue Key, the man behind the diner, each image is a piece of a puzzle that never fully comes together. The hypnotic atmosphere, Angelo Badalamenti's score, and Lynch's direction turn cinema into a pure sensory experience. It is not just the best film of the century, it is the last great work to push cinematic language into the inexplicable, to the place where film stops being film and becomes an eternal dream. The 2010s marked an era where cinema became more commercial, difficult times for filmmaking, yet masterpieces still emerged. The Tree of Life offered a profound meditation on life, memory, and the cosmos. Inception explored the dream world within science fiction. Prisoners elevated the thriller genre to an unprecedented level of intensity. But one film shattered all conventions, blending genres like never before. Parasite is not just the best movie of the decade. It is a masterpiece that transcends genres and borders. Bong Joon-ho crafts a fierce narrative about class struggle, seamlessly combining comedy, thriller, and drama with surgical precision. The story of the Kim family infiltrating the lives of the wealthy Park family is as entertaining as it is disturbing, slowly revealing a reality darker than it initially seems. Every shot is meticulously composed, every plot twist is unpredictable, and the tension remains unrelenting until the very last second. The house, transformed into a character of its own, symbolizes the insurmountable divide between the rich and the poor. With an impeccable cast and masterful direction, Parasite broke barriers by becoming the first non-English language film to win the Academy Award for Best Picture. But beyond awards and recognition, much of its impact lies in its astonishing ending. A plot twist that turns the film into pure madness, leaving us unable to believe what we are witnessing. The current decade, the 2020s, has unfortunately been the worst in cinema history. The absolute dominance of streaming, the lack of originality, and the endless cycle of sequels, remakes, and franchises have pushed true innovation to the background. However, for those who seek, masterpieces can still be found. The Substance explores human fragility, addiction, and self-destruction. Spider-Man. Across the Spider-Verse revolutionized animation with breathtaking visuals and an intense story. But speaking of intensity, the undisputed greatest masterpiece of this decade was released just a few months ago. The Brutalist is without a doubt the greatest cinematic achievement of this decade. Directed by Brady Corbett, this monumental film tells the story of Laszlo Toth, a Hungarian architect who, after surviving the Holocaust, grapples with the scars of his past while trying to build a life in the United States. Featuring an outstanding performance by Adrian Brody, the film delves into profound themes such as identity, trauma, and immigration, presenting them without any form of complacency. The storytelling is not only visceral, but also visually stunning, with Elol Crawley's cinematography crafting an emotionally charged landscape. The Brutalist is not just a film, it is a sensory experience that challenges contemporary cinematic conventions, returning to the roots of classic filmmaking through the use of VistaVision, as Hitchcock once did. Let's hope this film inspires future productions and brings great cinema back to this decade. Thank you for watching until the end. This video has undoubtedly been the most time-consuming one I have ever made. Just on the day of its release, I spent 12 hours working on it, but I truly hope it was worth it. I would greatly appreciate your support. A like, a subscription, and a comment letting me know your thoughts. Bye.